Hi you guys, welcome back to my channel, and today we will be talking about the movie Antz. So Antz starts off with Z, our main character, in a therapy session, and he is telling the therapist how he wished that he wasn't cut out to be a worker. And he is saying how he is so uncomfortable in front of crowds and that he worked in the big city his whole life. And his dad flew away when he was just a lava. And and he doesn't really like his job. Like the whole dirt digging thing, because he's a worker, so he digs tunnels all day and he helps build the colony. And like his whole life, he said to his therapist, his whole life he was never able to lift more than 10 times his own body weight, and everything he does is for the colony and never for himself. And he says, what about my needs? What about me? And then he says, man, I wasn't cut out to be a worker, I tell you right now. And the whole system makes me feel insignificant. And then his therapist says, congratulations, Z. You are insignificant. And then Z says, I am. And then we cut over to the title page where they say ants. And then you see all the ants working to dig the tunnel to make the tunnels better. And you even see the baby lavas. Now I cracked up when I saw this part I cracked up when I was reviewing the movie for the channel and I saw this. Like the baby lava was trying not to be a worker, so he was trying to scoot away so he will be missed, because even when they're little kids, their job gets taken for them when they are little kids. And then the baby lava tried to get away from being a worker because he wanted to be a soldier, but he didn't get away fast enough, so he was born a worker anyway. So, Z is on Wrecking Ball with his friend Azteca, and she says, come on, Z, help us build a bigger, better colony, and for crying out loud, try to be happy about it. So, they build a ladder so the wrecking ball can do its thing, but since Z says heights makes him nervous, being way up high makes him nervous and nauseous. So since it makes him nauseous, he's almost about to throw up. So he drops the ladder that drops the ball. And then Azteca says, oh, Z. And then Z says, yes, I understand. I dropped the ball to make the ladder. I understand. So, when we get to the general, he is a very stern person, and he wants to make a bigger and better colony, so he has this plan. So he goes to talk to the queen about starting a war against the termite colony, and then the queen says, General, we've been at peace with the termite colony for years. Why would they attack us? And then the general says they want our lands. They are desperate for more territory. And then The queen says, maybe we don't need to go to war. Maybe we can just negotiate a new treaty. And then the general says, no, the time to strike is now. So the queen agrees and says, okay. The queen agrees when the general says, I am trying to protect our home. And then the general says, yes, I understand, Your Majesty. And every ant is so dear and loving and precious to my heart. And then he says, imagine what the termite colonies will do to us if they ever get through. And then the queen says, yes, General, I understand what they can do to us. Very well. Prepare your war. And then we get to find out that the general is actually engaged to Princess Bala, the queen's daughter. And Princess Bala says, hello, General. I hope you're not just here on business, because it would be nice if we could have one conversation once before we get married. And then the general says, of course not. And then he asks the Cunner, his second in command, to schedule some alone time for him and Princess Bala. And then the general says, actually, okay, so so um the other general says, actually, we are a few seconds ahead of schedule. And so he says, excellent, Princess. And then she says, well, a few seconds isn't much, but I guess if it's quality time. And then Princess Bala says, so how was your day? And then the general says, well, we declared war. And then Princess Bala says, declared war. Wow, talk about a rough day. And then Captain Cutter just cuts in. Oh, that's his name, Captain Cutter. So, Captain Cutter cuts in and says, well, excuse me, General. I hate to interrupt, but time stands still for no ant. And then and then and then the general says, Princess, and then he kisses her hand goodbye. But to be fair, he did say how lovely she looks every time he sees her. So I guess he's polite enough to her. But I don't know, you guys. I just don't feel like they have anything in common. I'm with Bala on this one. Because Bala actually asks her Mom, remind me, why am I marrying this guy? Because we don't seem to have anything in common. The guy's a stiff. And then her mother says, yes, Bala, I know that the general can be a bit much at times. But I can see that he cares for you very deeply. And then Bala says, why? Why does he have to marry me? And then the queen says, because you are the one who is supposed to carry on my work. Now, come on, it's not all bad being princess, is it? Would you prefer digging tunnels all day, like the workers? And then Bala says, "Oh, mother, don't be so dramatic. But at least they have some fun every now and then." So we meet up again with Z and his friend Weaver, and they are actually having a good time, and they're talking, um they um so yeah, they're talking, and um dancing, and well, actually they're not dancing. um the um they go to have some juice at this bar thing, and then while they're having their juice, they um Z is talking to Weaver about, why did I have to be a worker? I don't have any fun being a worker, helping digging the tunnels. And then his friend Weaver says, Z, I known you for a long time, right? And then he says, definitely. You were born like 2 seconds after me. And then he says, yeah, and ever since we were little, I've been hearing you complain. What are you complaining about? In case you didn't know, we Ants are running the show. We're the lords of the earth. And then Z says, hey, don't talk to me about Earth, okay? I just spent half the day carrying it around. There just gotta be a better place. And then this ant tells him that is sitting by him that there is a better place, Insectopia. And then he tells him about how he was from Insectopia, but he left. And he says, I should have never left. And he was like, I got cut off from my unit. And then suddenly I saw it. Insectopia. Just follow the land of red and white. Follow the monolith. Listen to me. The monolith. And he gets carried away back home. And then the princess and the ladies in waiting sneak into the bar club to, to go dance, because it's 8:15 and it's time to dance. But Z doesn't really feel like dancing, so he just sits there until ba- until Bala comes. Okay. Okay, so I'm gonna give you Bala's line. So when she sneaks into the bar, right? She's sneaking in, and she tells the girls, "Come on, girls, let's take a walk on the wild side. And besides, no one's gonna recognize us." So she takes her crown off, but the ladies in waiting are nervous, and like the lady in waiting says, "Oh, just 5 minutes and then we're out of here, right? This place is off limits." And then Bala says, "Just blame it on me. Say it was all my idea." And then the lady in waiting says, "Well, it is all your idea." So she asks Z to dance, and then Z dances with Princess Bala, and they end up having like so much fun until he steps on another ant's foot by mistake. And then he says, "Watch it, worker." And then and then and then Princess Bala comes over to defend him and says, "You watch your buddy or you're gonna be in big trouble." And then Z says, "What are you, crazy? That dude can hurt us both. Come on, let's go. Come on, let's go." And then and then and then somebody tells him to get back in line and finish the dance. And then Bala says, "What if he doesn't want to?" And and then Z says, "Yeah, what if I don't like my place?" And then and then and then and then when the guy notices that he's trying to get smart with him, he tries to hit him, but Weaver steps in and says, "Hey, you better watch it with that aggressive behavior, buddy." And then he says he's just a worker, and then a fight breaks out in the middle of the bar, and then like the lady the hang on. Yeah, um the lady the waiting say, "Princess Bala, the guards are coming." And then Princess Bala runs, and then Z says, "Princess, you're a princess? When can I see you again?" And then Bala says, "Let me think. Never." And then she kisses Z on the cheek and she says bye. And then Z says, "Wait," and then he gets hit in the face. But the next day, he's just so happy. He's like singing how much it feels so good to be in love. It's just so cute. And then he goes back to the bar the next day to wait for her. And then the bartender asks him, um the um can I get you another one? And then Z says, "No, I think I'm just gonna head home." And then he says, "Well, yeah, I don't blame you. It's always slow every time." And um it's 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 always slow um the night before um the royal reviews. And he says, "You know, I used to work." And then Z gets the bright idea that if he can go in Weaver's place to be a soldier, he can see Princess Bala again. So he runs back to the room, wakes up Weaver, and says, "Weaver, I figured it out. Let me go in your place as a soldier, and you can switch places with me and be a worker for a day. This is my only chance to see her, Princess Bala." And then and 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 then Weaver says, "Are you nuts? You want me to switch places with you? Do you realize how much trouble we can get in? You can even get in trouble by listening to somebody impersonating a soldier." And then the ants that were listening, they just fell asleep because they didn't want to get in trouble. And honestly, I don't really blame them because I wouldn't want to get in trouble either. But Weaver finally agrees. So Z is off, and he is and Z is off in Weaver's place as a soldier, and Weaver is off in Z's place as a worker. And this is where he meets Azteca. And him and Azteca get to talking, and it actually goes off pretty well until there's until their supervisor realizes that they haven't been working, and so he tells him, "Look, I just had a talk with General Mandible, and either you can get to work or you're fired." And then Azteca steps in and she says, "Come on, cut him a break. I mean, he's new." And then the guy says, "How about we help your attitude for the day by taking away some of your rations? Okay? How does that sound? Okay? Get back to get get back to work and have a nice day." And then Weaver says, "I'm sorry that I got you in trouble, but you can share some of my rations if you want." And then Azteca says, "Are you asking me out to dinner?" And then Weaver says, "Well, no. Well, if you didn't have anything else planned." And then Azteca says, "I'll check my calendar. You know, I'm kind of glad Z's taking a breather." And then, back with Z, he meets his friend Barbados, and General Mandible tells him that they are going into battle, and Z is scared, but my but the best character, Barbados, says, "Don't worry, kid, I will watch out for you." So they go into battle and they go to face the termites, and then everybody's fighting, and then the termite almost eats, and the termite almost attacks Z with the acid from their foreheads, because they spit out acid from their foreheads. But he doesn't attack Z because Barbados steps in, and then Z says, "Barbados, you saved my life." And then he said, "Oh, don't get all sappy about it." And then they continue just to fight, but Z gets trapped under a termite in some rocks. So he gets trapped down there the whole battle. So yeah. He gets trapped down there. He gets trapped down there the whole battle. And when the battle's over, he and when the battle is over, he actually moved the rock, and the termite is gone because okay, all the termites are gone, and mostly all of the soldiers are gone. Barbados is gone, but he does tell Z to not follow them the whole to not follow the colony your whole life. Think for yourself, and don't make my mistake and follow the colony your whole life. So that's the last thing that Barbados says when he goes. So Z actually makes it back. So Z is the only one of the soldiers who make it back to the colony. And may I just have a moment of silence for my boy Barbados? You will not be forgotten, my friend. So, cause I love Barbados, so it feels like I got your back, man. So for your royal sacrifice, my friend. You will never be forgotten. So, so after this, Weaver is sad because he thinks Z is gone, but he sees Z with the general, and while they're holding up signs saying "Welcome back, soldier! You're a hero! You're a war hero! You're a hero!" they see that it's Z, and then Weaver in Azteca says, "Hey, that's no soldier, that's Z! Yahoo! He made it!" And I just love this. Like, he's so happy. Like, yeah, I'm the hero. Yeah, he just loves it. So he goes see the queen and Princess Bala, and Princess Bala says, "Hey, don't I know you from somewhere?" And then he he says, "Maybe or maybe not." Or then again, ouch. And then youch is what he said when he first met Bala. And then Bala says, "That's it. You're the guy from the bar." And the mom says, and the general says, "Bar? What bar?" And then and then and and then Princess Bala says, I danced with this guy in the bar the other night. He was just a worker then." And then the general says, "A worker danced with my fiance?" And then Z says, "Fiance? Whoa, 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 you got it all wrong. You see, she was the one who was making all the moves." And then the general says, "Arrest him." And then he says, "Wait a minute, can we just discuss this?" And he grabs Princess Bala, and he is not trying to take her hostage. He's just trying to use her as a shield to protect himself. And then the queen thinks that he's trying to take him hostage. And then the queen thinks that Z is trying to take the princess hostage. So Z just went along with it and says, "No, I'm not. I mean, yes, I am. Nobody move or the princess gets it." And then he takes the spear like a rock spear, and he says, "Don't make me hurt her." And then all the soldiers are gathered around them, but then they fall down the garbage chute and outside. And before the soldiers can even rescue her, they get melted by a magnifying glass. And then Princess Bala says, "What are you doing? Get off me. Have you lost your mind?" And I am like, seriously, with Bala on this one? Because, dude, you already defeated the termites, okay? There's no reason for you to fake kidnap Bala to act like something to act like something you're not. So anyway, the soldiers come to rescue Bala, but they get melted by a magnifying glass. I told you that already, okay? Right. And a giant centipede almost comes for them both. But they actually get away from the magnifying glass in the centipede. And then Princess Bala, she's thinking of herself. Princess Bala saying, "Where am I? I'm probably lost." And then she tells Z, "Look, whoever you are, Just climb up that tree and find out where I am. So he climbed up the tree and he sees the encyclopedia. And while this is happening, him and Princess Bala get in a fight, and she says, "Oh my God, I can't believe you passed yourself as I cannot believe you passed yourself off as a soldier. And what did you do? Talk those termites to talk those termites to death?" And then Z just walks away and says, and then with this, Z just walked away and climbed up the tree like she suggested, and this is when Z says, "Boy, you really chose the right husband, and you can take yourself back to the colony, 'cause I don't really find that as a rewarding career, and you can take yourself back to the colony." And then the princess says, "Hey, excuse me, you kidnapped me, so that means you have to take me back." And honestly, I don't know who to agree with on this one. Like, he doesn't have to take you back, but she raises a good point. You did kind of kidnap her, so the best thing that you can do is take her back and tell her mom that it was just all a misunderstanding, and that you used her, and that you didn't kidnap her, and then once you explain it to the queen, she will understand and nothing will happen to you. So I don't understand why he didn't do that. But he sees Insectopia while he's up there trying to figure out where they are. Because he realizes that they are lost, but the key is not to panic. And Princess Bala and Z, they were already panicking. So he sees Insectopia from up there. And when he comes down, he says, that's great. But you can go back. I'm going to Insectopia." And then Princess Bala says, "Please, Insectopia." And then Z says, "Hey, I happen to have it on a very reliable source that it exists." And then Bala says, "Fine, no problem. I'll take myself back. You go back to Insectopia." But then she sees another centipede, and then she she says, "Z, wait for me, wait up." And then back with the queen and the general, the queen says, "I want no excuses, General. Just find my daughter." So Ziambala gets Ziambala accidentally get trapped in some water after they are drinking some, because Princess Bala is drinking some first. Let me explain. Princess Bala is drinking some first, and they come near this and and they come near this um they come near this puddle, near this big water fountain. They come near this puddle around this big water fountain, and the water fountain is dripping water, and Z gets trapped inside, and then Bala helps him out, and then Z says thanks, and then Bala says don't mention it, and then she says, "Perhaps we can put this all behind us and head back to the colony." But then Z gets gets a boat, and then she says, "Oh, Z, what are you doing?" And then he says, "We gotta cross the lake. I have a feeling that Insectopia is on the other side." Bala, trust me on this. I mean, do you really want to spend your whole life as Mr. Raving Lunatic? And that's what he called the general. That is what he called the general because they are engaged. That is what he called the general. And then Princess Bala says, "Well, why not?" So she hops in the boat with Z, and while he is rolling the boat, Princess Bala says, "I hope you know what you are doing." And then Z says, "Yeah, me too." And then, with all the workers working, Z's story gets around, and it turns out that he is leading the revolution because all the ants say, if Z don't dig, I don't dig. We don't have to be here. We get a choice. So all the ants are hyped up, and it gets around to Weaver, and then Weaver starts to laugh and says, "You're talking about Z? I think you may be confused because I don't think Z said that." And then, and then, and then Azteca tells them that they do have a choice. Look at Z. He decided he wanted something, and he went for it. Nothing stopped him. And then the worker said it, and then the worker says to them, "We don't have to be here. We have a choice." And then it gets around that the general doesn't want you to know it, but we don't really have to work in the tunnels no more. We have a choice. And then all the workers gather up and say, "We want tea. We want tea." And then the general actually gets Weaver and Azteca, and then and then he and then he hits my boy Weaver. I was so mad. He hit my boy Weaver. I was so upset, you guys. He hit my boy Weaver in the face, and he said, "Tell me where Z is." And then he says, "No ant matters, not even her." And then he's and then some soldier that is working for the general hurts Azteca, and then he says, "Wait, Insectopia." And then the colonel says, "Soldier, you think this is a game? Insectopia doesn't exist." And then putting all the clues together that he that Princess Bala went off in the lake, that her trail cut off at the lake. He says, "Actually, it does." And then he tells and then he told the colonel, "Round up every ant you can find and go search for Insectopia immediately." And then, at first, it's like, and then with Z and Bala, Z's still sleeping, and then Bala sees the land of red and white, and then she says, "Oh my God, Z, come here." And then he thinks that they're in Insectopia, but actually it's just a picnic blanket with food on it. And he wants to bite the sandwich, but the plastic is covering the sandwich. But he doesn't know that. And so Bala says, "Well, what's the problem?" And then and and then Z says, "Well, there's some type of field." And then they see some bees. And then Z asks, excuse me, how do you get in?" And then the bees and and then one bee, who is a lady named Muffy, says, "We have to help them. They are poor, they are dirty, they are smelly." And then her husband says, "Chip." And then and then and then her husband Chip says, "Why do you want to help every insect that comes across? And you want to say good morning to them and help everyone." And then she says, "Chippy, I know you laugh at my hobbies, but this is important to me." And then Chip says, "You have such a big heart, and that's the reason why I love you." And then Muffy, the poor, the poor bee, gets hurt. Well, actually, she is gone by a fly swatter. And honestly, I would do the same thing because I don't like bugs. So I would take my fly swatter and she would be gone. If I was in this movie with my wheelchair, I would grab a fly swatter and kill that bug that is sitting on the picnic blanket. And I would kill the ants as well because I just don't like bugs, you guys. I just don't like bugs. So anyway, so anyway, um, so anyway, he's after after she is gone, Z and Bala turn around and they try to run, but they actually get stumped on by a shoe. But it's got gum in the bottom of the shoe, so Bala actually gets taken away while she's asking for Z's help. Z's trying to pull her out as fast as he can, and she is saying, "Don't let me go, Z, don't let me go." And then the shoe just takes off walking, and then you can hear Bala screaming, but Z actually climbed the shoestring to get to Bala, and he actually gets to Bala, and then the person actually used a penny to get the gum from the back of his shoe off. So he flicks the penny into a garbage bin. And then when they get off of the penny, guess where the garbage bin leads? Insectopia. They found it at last, and they are having a good time. Eating, talking to other people who live in Insectopia. They're having a good time. They're getting to know each other, and I just love this scene so much. Meanwhile, back with the general, he says, I heard about I heard a lot about the Z," he is telling the audience. "And honestly, I don't like what I'm hearing. Cause where's Z now? Can anyone point him out? And I can tell you where he is. He is off somewhere with our princess because he doesn't really care about us. We are the hard workers, and I'm telling you, when you work hard to dig this last tunnel, I will personally see that you have the day off, and you will be the guest of honor at the tunnel digging ceremonies." And then everybody shouts, "Mandible, mandible, mandible, mandible," and everybody is back on his side, but the but his right hand man, um, but his right hand man, the colonel, is feeling kind of bad about this, but he doesn't want to let his boss down, but he still feels kind of bad about doing this. But he's keeping it, but he's keeping his mouth shut because he doesn't want to let the guy down. He doesn't. He doesn't want to let the boss down. So back on Insectopia, Z and Bala are getting closer, and Z actually asks Bala, "Why did you come to the bar that night?" And then Bala says, I guess, I guess I was looking for some trouble." And then Z says, "Well, you definitely found it." And then, and then, and 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 then before this, Z is actually telling her about his friend Barbados, and then Bala says, "I didn't know it was really like that. Up in the palace, I guess we just let the general make all these decisions." And then they almost kiss, but then the ants stop him and says, "Hey, new guy, we need more wood." So he goes and gets the wood, and he tells Bala to hold that thought, whatever she was thinking, because they were about to kiss right here, but they didn't, because Z is going to get the wood. And then before he goes, he says, "Hey, do you ever wonder why they call you guys pests?" So he actually goes and gets the wood, while the general finally finds Insectopia and tells Baba that she needs to go back to that she needs to go back home. And then Bala says, "Well, I'm not going back to the colony." So the general takes her by force. He flies her away by force. But it's okay because Chip Chip the bee that lost his wife flies back for Baba when she makes it back to the colony. Chip, the guy Chip that lost his wife, flies flies Z back to the colony, and then Z says, "Thanks, Chip," and then Chip says, "Well, it's what my Muffy would have wanted." And then he flies back to where he came from. And then Z actually has to go into undercover as a worker and think they're different because they are digging that last tunnel without any brakes. They are serious about digging this tunnel, guys, without any brakes. So while they're digging the tunnel, the princess is found by the general, but the general says he's gonna wash away the old colony and make a new colony. So Bala tries to stop him, and then he ties Bala to a chair. So he sits. So he tells Bala, "I am going to make a new colony, and you are gonna be my wife." And then I guess because the queen thinks Bala is missing or gone, she doesn't come out of the room while the general plans to wash away the whole colony because the princess found his plans underneath the desk. And then Z comes back for her. He actually climbs the tower to see Princess Bala to actually get her out of there. And then while she is screaming, she actually kicks the window open. And then Z comes in and says, "Well, your manners didn't improve much." And then Princess Bala says, "Z, you came back for me." And then Z says, "Of course I came back for you. I have strong feelings for you. You're beautiful." And then and then and 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 then they kiss, and then Bala actually shows the general's plans to Z, and then he says, "When you said he was gonna wash away when you, and then and and then that's when Z realizes that the plan is not just to get a new colony, but to wash away the whole colony because there's gonna be a flood. Because that tunnel will dig into a river. So everybody is digging on the tunnel, but when Z gets down there, he tells everybody to stop because if you keep digging, you're gonna make a flood. And then everybody says, "But we got orders." And then Z says, "Forget the orders, make your own choice. Do what you want to do and don't dig." And then the worker guy who is leading the colony and says, "I got ordered another order, say dig." And then Weaver sees Z and then he hugs Z and he tells Azteca what's going on with the tunnels. And the princess warns her mother, and then and then the queen says, "Everybody, let's not panic. Let's make a single file line because do you know what the guy who was leading the colony did? He punched a hole in the tunnel, which V said not to do, and he caused a flood. So everything is flooding. But Z comes up with the plan, and they all make a ladder to reach the top and to dig their and to actually dig their way out. And but people don't. But everybody thinks that they can. But everybody thinks that they can't do it. And then Weaver gives Z a boost, and then he makes a speech like, "Guys, we can do this. If we can build a colony, we can escape a colony." So they actually build a ladder, and it actually goes up well because they actually build a ladder, but they don't have enough ants, and so Weaver says, "Well, you two better get up there," and then and then and then and 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 then and 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 and, I can remember Azteca saying, "Weaver, you can't hold it alone." And then Weaver says, "Get going." And then so they climb up the top because they were working on to build the ladder. So it was like Z, Azteca, and Weaver building the ladder from the beginning. So they were helping on the bottom. Mm, now Z and Azteca has to help at the top, and then Bala ran off to go help her mother, but before Z and Bala ran off from each other, they kissed each other, and then and and then before and then before Azteca went away, she actually kissed Weaver, and that was just such a cute moment because they're dating now. But anyway, they build a ladder, and the general is giving a speech how today the new day, because him and all the soldiers are gathered outside, and how they got outside because they took the private entryway to go outside, and they just left the workers who worked so hard down in the tunnels to fly. But down in the tunnels to fly, it just gave me a bad feeling in my stomach, like, you just left those poor worker ants. But don't worry, because Zia's on the case, because he is on top of the tunnel with 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 Azteca, and he is looking to dig everyone out. So he gets to the top, and he can see the sun, and then everybody is out. Everybody is almost out. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. He can almost see the sun, and then when he reaches the top of the tunnel, the general says, "What are you doing here? This is only for the colony." And then Z says, "What are you saying? We are the colony. Can you please give me a hand?" And then he says, "No, you're not." And then cut and then Connor just has enough, and then he punches the general, and then the general says, "Connor, what are you doing?" "Doing what I should have done." So he helped Z up and all the other ants. And he says, "With all due respect, sir, this is for the good of the colony, sir." And then the general says, "You useless, ungrateful maggot, I am the colony." And then he pushes, and then he actually ends up pushing Z down. But all the other ants, okay, but all the other ants get out, right? All the other ants get out. All the other ants get out, and Connor tried to protect Z, but Z actually gets pushed down there, and Connor and actually Connor Connor actually had in okay, Z actually gets pushed down there, so he is down in the water. But all the other ants are down there, and then Princess Bala says, "Where's Z?" And then and then and then Weaver gets Z, and then Weaver's out, and then Weaver says, "Everybody give Z some room." And then Bala says, "Oh, Z, please wake up." And then she kisses him, and then he wakes up, and then they kiss again, and then she says, "Z, you made it." And then Weaver says, "You're the end." And then they high five, and then everybody cheers, cause and then everybody cheers because everybody made it. The colony is safe now, and they got a brand new colony. Well, the general actually gets pushed down. The general actually gets pushed down in the tunnel hole that they tried to dig their way out of. So all the other ants dig their way out of the tunnel hole, but the general actually gets pushed down there. He actually just falls down there. and nobody actually sees if the general's okay. He actually just falls down the hole. So anyway, um, so anyway, so so anyway, every ant is cheering, and they put Z and Bala up. So what happens is every ant is cheering, and they put Z and Bala up in the air, and then Z says, "Fellas, fellas, this isn't necessary, although I could get used to it." And then it turned out that Z and Bala actually got married, and they are starting to start a family. And they actually rebuild the colony. It's better than before, and he has the same job that he had before, but only this time he chose it. And their new colony has a pool. And him and Bala actually got married, and they want to have some kids, probably 5 million or so. And that is the end of the movie. Bye. And I will see you guys for open season. Bye. I will see you guys for open season the movie. Bye. Oh, and before I forget, if you like this video, consider liking it, leave a comment if you want, subscribe if you want to, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.